What's going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds vs. Boys here, coming to you after the Eagles' monumental, magnificent win and beatdown of the Dallas Cowboys 41-7 to not only beat the Cowboys, but win the NFC East. They are now 13-3. They are locked into the 2 seed. They have won the division. They have won the division for the 11th time in my lifetime. They are going to the playoffs for the 14th time in my lifetime. To put that in perspective, if you are new, I am 30 years old, so half of my lifetime the Eagles have spent their existence in the playoffs for me. It is a great day, a great occasion. If you are here in the Northeast, it was sunny, 60 degrees, felt like good football weather. It was a phenomenal day. If you are here joining us live on YouTube, joining us live on TikTok, I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody who's tuning in. We'll take your questions as they come in, both on YouTube and on TikTok. As we react to this game, get into everything, one of the final times that we get to do this together in the regular season, and we move on to the playoffs.
A great day for the Eagles. I thought we thought it would go two different ways. One, and this is the way it did not go, was like the Gardner Minshew game against the Saints in 2022 when Hurts was out for the second time with his shoulder injury. He's out for kind of like the second time this week. We thought it might go that way. There was enough tape on Kenny Pickett that it would turn out to be Gardner Minshew. Or they would autocorrect from what happened last week where they gave up 36 points. The offense was able to move the ball but not execute perfectly with the backup quarterback. A lot of that being a backup quarterback who was thrust into the game in the first quarter, not expecting to play. It went the latter. And it was a phenomenal experience because I think they got back to a lot of things that they did well. They won in all three phases of the game. And beyond all three phases of the game, there were different things on both offense, defense, and special teams that they did really, really well that you didn't know if they were capable of doing, as we lose the mic here, without Jalen Hurts. And it wasn't just like the Kenny Pickett thing, because we knew what they wanted to do, and they tried to do that early, was to establish the run, and everybody knew that they were going to try to do that. One, they're chasing the records with Saquon Barkley, but two, they want to alleviate that pressure from the backup quarterback, whoever that may be, whether it be Kenny Pickett or soon to be Tanner McKee. Regardless, they were trying to do that early, and they got off to another slow start there in the first quarter. A lot of that being, and you could kind of just feel it, if they could just get the offense onto the field and establish a rhythm, they would be okay. The problem being, and it's not necessarily a problem, they turned the ball over 4 times, the Cowboys did, and they got a pick 6 early. So it was a pick 6 on the first drive. They were moving the ball. And the second drive, the Cowboys were moving the ball again. So you saw the Eagles defense just on the field a lot. And it's not really to their own fault. Like, they had the pick 6 and they were right back on. So they looked a little fatigued. And you could just feel if the Eagles could get offense could get on the field, start to establish a rhythm, that they would be in good shape. Well, that happened immediately after that first quarter. So even in that first quarter, as you're saying, man, the Cowboys are able to move the ball. How much of that was just the fact that the Eagles defense had to be on the field 20 plays? And then after that, they seemed to be really, really solid. And it wasn't just, I thought they did a great job, again, of forcing turnovers, and I want to talk about that too. But I thought in all phases, they were able to, after early allowing the Cowboys to get second and manageable, third and manageables, they kind of stopped that, right? It kind of turned into third and longs and such, and then the Cowboys started having to punt and everything of that nature. But I want to talk about the offense a ton because it's going to be the talk, as it always is, and the Kenny Pickett experience, because we knew it would ride or die on how much he was able to. I don't want to use the word manage the game, because I think he does a lot more than that. You saw early, they knew that everyone was just going to stack the box against them, try to utilize Saquon Barkley as Weapon X, and just run it down their throats. So that first drive, they come out and throw the ball 3 times. And I will say this of the Eagles, if there's one criticism, it's like in those 50-50 situations, they sometimes become predictable in the sense that you wouldn't expect. So what I mean by that is everybody thinks they're going to come out and run the ball to establish the run early. But if you're a defensive coordinator, you're probably thinking, well, they're going to try to throw it so that they can establish the run. And that's exactly what they did early in the game, is they came out and threw it on the first three plays. And then on the second drive, came out and ran it 3 straight times. And there's a level of predictability there that you don't like. But I think they learned from it quickly. That's why you have slow starts, and they're able to adjust as the games go. We're going to fix the microphone as we go here. And I think they did a very, very good job of that. And again, we talked about it going into this game. get quick hitters for Devontae Smith, for A.J. Brown, get the ball out of Kenny Pickett's hands. I think sometimes his awareness level in the pocket concerns me a little bit. So getting the ball out of his hands before disaster hits in the form of Micah Parsons. There's no negative plays, and they were able to throw the ball successfully on first down, which I like to see. It sets up those 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4s, and then really everything's at your level. Everything's in your playbook that you can do. You can run the ball with Saquon Barkley. You can go back to the pass, but you're getting up to the line quickly. You're not allowing the defense to kind of, get set, get into blitzes, get into pressures. I thought they did a phenomenal job of that today for the last 3 quarters of just, take what you got. Don't do anything too crazy with the backup quarterback. I think they ran Wildcat one time, but there's no trick plays. I think teams fall victim to that when they're playing with backups is like, oh, we got to pull every trick out. And it's like, well, you don't actually have to be super elaborate. You actually just have to be less complex. Like, let them play within that system. And we know Kenny Pickett, I thought his best play of the day. Ironically, I actually thought his best play of the day was the touchdown that he threw to A.J. Brown that knocked him out of the game, and there was a holding call. But he is able to kind of, elaborate, if we want to call it, as a quarterback and get himself out of the pocket and make plays. So the play that worked the best and actually counted, aside from the A.J. Brown touchdown that was called back, was his play downfield to Grant Calcaterra there in the 2nd quarter. And that's where the Eagles really took over. We knew it, and we thought it. As soon as they could get the offense rolling, it'd be really, really hard for the Cowboys, and that's exactly what happened. So the Eagles went up 14-7. They forced a turnover, then you're up 17-7. Then you get the ball back in the half, and what I love there is they weren't settling for field goals with the backup quarterback. They were going for it. And they knew, and Greg Olsen called this out on the broadcast. And I know Greg Olsen and Joe Davis had a week last week where they didn't quite provide context for the people that Jalen Hurts was out of the game, and that's why the Commanders were able to be successful. But I think part of that, they were able to re-emphasize themselves today as a really good broadcasting crew. And they kind of pointed out, they're like, hey, if Andrew Booth is going to single cover A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, the Eagles are going to attack it. And they did that. And I appreciated that they did that even with a backup quarterback. They take the deep shot to Devontae Smith. We thought it was a touchdown. It sets them up at the 1 yard line. They don't... they gamble. They go for the second QB sneak, which I thought they did very, very effectively. And, they could have easily said to themselves, hey, we have a backup quarterback. Let's take the field goal to end the half. Let's get points. We have the ball to start the second half. And they didn't do that. They get the touchdown. They're up 24-7. And even playing with the backup quarterback, they were able to, when you have that lead, it takes that pressure off and it gets into what we want to do, which is run the ball with Saquon Barkley. You come out in the second half, you're up 17, you're playing with a backup quarterback, then your backup quarterback gets hurt, and you're ending up with a backup quarterback, and they're Tanner McKee playing his first starts and first passes as an NFL quarterback in a real game. We all appreciated him in preseason and thought he was really good. I think he has a stronger arm than Kenny Pickett does. It's pretty apparent even on tape and even today. But you knew what it was going to be. They could have taped the play to the helmets of the offensive line into Tanner McKee, and it was going to say, we are about to run this ball with Saquon Barkley. They were up 17. They didn't want any turnovers with their emergency quarterback in the game, and they still were able to establish that run. But you can do so because of how effectively you were able to throw it in that second quarter and create a lead for yourself, which I think is so key no matter who's playing and who you're playing against, and especially who you're playing against going forward in playoff games. Establishing a read, commanding the ball, having the control of total plays and time of possession, I think is so important, especially playing with a defense who is forcing turnovers at this rate. It makes it very, very hard for even the best offenses to keep up because you're limiting their opportunities to keep up. You're limiting the amount that you are going to see them on the field. So I thought that was a really, really good job. And then you get into the Saquon show in the second half. And we'll talk about Saquon. I want to do like a final in memoriam of the memoriam is not a great word for it because this is far from over, but I just can't believe the season that he's had. So we'll do one final recap. I've done the rant multiple times on Saquon, but there's two guys I want to shout out because coming out of last week, we said this. We were like, I don't feel any different about this Eagles game and about this Eagles team as I did before the Commanders game. I at noon last Sunday, And at 5 last Sunday, I felt the exact same way about the Eagles despite the loss. And you're saying, well, why is that? They gave up 36 points. They lost to a division rival. Jaden Daniels looked awesome. All of those things are true. But here is the big difference. One, and the obvious one, is that Jalen Hurts went out. But also, even with Kenny Pickett, they're one drop by Devontae Smith away from winning that game, sealing it with a touchdown. We go home, we win the division. Today doesn't even matter. You're pretty much just competing for the 1 seed, and the division is all locked up. And then 2 was CJ Gardner-Johnson, who was ejected from the game. And I thought they really, really struggled from that point. The Commanders were able to take deep shots. And I pointed this out on the podcast this week, but they struggled with substitutions. They struggled with where to be in coverage. They struggled with very, very basic things once he went out of the game. And it was somebody thrust into a role who usually is not there. They were subbing Tristan McCullum for Kelly Ringo. Kelly Ringo's not even a safety. They bring him out. They have 12 men on the field. That ends up being a 50-yard touchdown pass to the Commanders in the fourth quarter to put them in striking distance. And you think to yourself, and even on the game-winning touchdown, they got behind the safeties, which is kind of impossible in situations like that, where it's like, you know, they need a touchdown. You know, you're guarding the end zone. How is someone getting behind you as a safety? But those are things that happen when your starters are in the game. You come back this week, and the 2 guys that needed to redeem themselves, quote unquote, because they were still good in my book. But CJ Gardner-Johnson gets the pick 6 to start the game, picking off Cooper Rush, taking it to the house, and set the tone early. Hey, we're here to play. Hey, this is going to be a great day. He ended up with 2 interceptions on the day, one of those being the pick 6 that set the tone. Welcome back, revenge game. He got thrown out for saying mean words. We'll digress on the officials today. We won't go too hard on them, but it was great to see how good he can be when he's not throwing out for being mean words. I thought this was the NFL, not fucking preschool. You're allowed to taunt your opponent. If someone gets in your face, you can say something. If someone shoves your helmet off, usually they get penalized as well. And then 2, Devontae Smith, over 100 yards receiving today, 2 touchdowns. He should have had 3 touchdowns, really. Again, it seemed like anytime they had single coverage with Devontae Smith, they were willing to take a shot to him. There was one play that I loved in the second half with Tanner McKee. It was the same route tree that they ran on 3rd down in the red zone last week, and he dropped it. They went back to it this week. 3rd down in the red zone. He creates separation from his corner, catches it, sets them up for the red zone. They score. I thought it was really, really good work, and just really good overall work by Devontae Smith the whole day. He was good. A.J. Brown was good. The back shoulder throw from Tanner McKee to A.J. Brown on that touchdown leads me to believe that Tanner McKee is not going to be a 3rd emergency QB in the NFL for much longer. And as he progresses, is probably going to be a backup to a possible like starter on a low-level team, like a Titans or Panthers or something like that. Maybe not the Panthers because of Bryce Young, but one of those lower-level teams. You can see him getting a shot there, or like a Raiders or a Saints this year, where they're starting like Aiden O'Connell or Jake Hayner. Like, you could be able to start Tanner McKee in those situations and feel comfortable. I think his arm's really good. And that throw, it's one of those things. I listened to the Ringer Fantasy Football podcast, and they were talking about Michael Penix, and they're like, yeah, I saw him throw 5 times. There's some people who are just like, yeah, I know, I'm good. He's good. I saw enough. And I kind of felt that way about Tanner McKee. Going into this preseason, everyone said, hey, he's had the better camp than Kenny Pickett has. And then I watched it today. I was like, oh, yeah, he's better. Like, he just has a better arm. And no disrespect to Kenny Pickett, because I thought he did play really well. You can just see it coming that Tanner McKee is going to be a formidable backup quarterback in years to come. But again, huge for these guys who needed quote-unquote redemption to play well, and they did. 2 interceptions for CJ Gardner-Johnson, 2 touchdowns for Devontae Smith, and over 100 yards receiving. They were crucial for both the offense and defensive units. I thought that was the key to the game, is the guys who, like you saw last week, if they do their job, the Eagles win that game. And that's why I felt so good about the Eagles even leaving that game. And it's the same way I feel now after this beatdown on the Cowboys 41-7. And it's because of the guys like that. And another thing, when we're talking about small things, the special teams. Can we talk about the fact, why was Jake Elliott just not the place kicker all year? Like, why wasn't he on kickoff duty? Every single time, except for one, he was able to get a touchback on the kicks. I don't understand why we were ever using Braden Mann in that role. And I know this is kind of conspiracy theory, but multiple people brought it up. Jake Elliott has felt out of rhythm this year because he's not on kickoff duty and he's just simply kicking field goals, so he's not on the field as much. So I don't really understand why we didn't use him more, and he's clearly just better than Braden Mann in this. The only time that the Cowboys brought it back, they actually wasted 7 seconds in a 2-minute situation and got the ball back to the 20 instead of the 30. So I don't really understand why Jake Elliott has just not been that guy all year, but I'll take it. And it kind of solves the special teams problem that we had a week ago. So any issues that you saw last week, it feels like they kind of solved it a little bit this week. And I'll say this, I don't know where else to put this in there, but so I'll put it here. Speaking of special teams, I have brought this up on the podcast multiple times. There are small details that turn good teams into great teams. And as bad as the special teams were for the Eagles last week, I think they've been pretty good this year. If you watch punt returns, watch Kaylee Ringo and watch Sidney Brown, the Gunners, and the way they bust their ass down the field on punt return duty. There's no half-assing it. They full speed take on 2 guys to get to the punt returner. It is phenomenal to watch. It's what happens on good teams who try and are clearly practicing hard and are playing hard. So if Sidney Brown gets thrown out of a game with 2 minutes to go, I don't care because he plays hard. He's in that situation because he's taking on and fighting 2 guys. If they want to try to double team him and he takes one to the ground, I could give 2 fucks less. If the Cowboys want to embarrass themselves and have a guy taken out and get ejected from the game and lose 41-7, that's all good on me. I think Sidney Brown deserves that. And he deserved the celebration on the way out of the stadium because, again, it's a small thing. And you think about it, like these things don't really pop up in a 41-7 win over the Cowboys, but they do when you play other teams who are good at it, like the Vikings. When you watch the Vikings, they're good and they're sound in every situation. They always win the turnover differential. They have good special teams. I know the kicker missed 2 field goals today, but it doesn't matter. They're good in all these elements. It's the difference between winning a divisional round playoff game and losing a divisional round playoff game. So when you have guys like Sidney Brown and Kaylee Ringo who bust their ass down the field so that you can't return punts, that matters. When you have a kicker who can get the ball into the end zone on kickoff so there's no touchback, so you get the ball at the 30 instead of the 40 on game-winning drives for the Commanders, who you're probably going to play in the playoffs as a 17, those things matter. And it seems like they were able to correct some of that today, and they've been pretty strong on that this year. So everything they were doing, offense, defense, special teams, was really, really good. A few last things. Again, I thought overall, the defense was really, really good. They were missing the Kobe Dean today. Early, it looked like that could be a potential issue. Rico Dowdle had some run, and then the backup did have a holding call. They had a few flags early where they were extending drives for the Cowboys. They fixed that quite quickly. And I think what's most important to point out with this defense in a positive, Nets now 9 turnovers in the past 2 weeks. They are ball hawks. It means that they are in good position. It means they're in good placement. It means they're in good coverage. One of those interceptions was he just lofted in a double coverage. Didn't see what Cooper Rush saw there, but they played that well. The pick 6 was beautiful. They passed it off from one guy to another. It looked like CJ Gardner-Johnson and the linebacker Zach Bond were there. There are a few situations I think they could even had more interceptions because they were in good placement. They never over pursue the quarterback, which I think is key. They were able to shut down the run game after that first quarter. There wasn't much there. Again, it's the depth of things. Bryce Huff was back. Even Moro Ojomo had a tackle for loss that was key. There was a bunch of guys up in that front that were able to play well, get penetration, stop the run, get pressure, that forced turnovers, they only technically had 2 sacks, but I think they got a lot of pressures. Jalen Carter goes without saying. They're just menaces sometimes on that defense. They run that like 5-man front where it feels like Zach Bond is defensive end and then he's a linebacker. It feels like, again, I'll say this again and again, but it feels like there's 3 of him on the field at all times. It is awesome. So I think that's another key as well going into the playoffs. And that 9 turnovers, the reason I bring that up, and I'm talking about the Vikings again, who, if you make it past the first round, would probably be your opponent because they're stuck in a wild card situation, are the Vikings, even though they're probably the 3rd best team in the NFC. I talk about that because it seems like they always win the turnover differential, and people, even if you're not in on Sam Darnold now, I think you should be. But I think with a team like that, it's the same as with the Eagles. They limit your opportunities. They control the ball. They run it well with Aaron Jones, and then they set Sam Darnold up for success. And when you think you have him bottled up, oh, by the way, there's Justin Jefferson. He broke through your double coverage. So I think that they run a similar system as the Eagles do. They blitz effectively. They create pressure. Pressure creates turnovers. So when I say all these things about the Eagles is because you're going to run into situations where you're facing them as well, where you're facing a Vikings team who does the same exact thing as you do. So it's great to see coming down the stretch, they're forcing 9 turnovers in 2 weeks. I think that's really, really good. Now back to the offense. One final time. Saquon Barkley is an Eagle. Saquon Barkley is an Eagle. Saquon Barkley is an Eagle. I cannot believe that he is. It still feels surreal to this day. Every time he touches the ball, it blows my mind that he is here in Philadelphia. The king has returned to Pennsylvania. It's even more amplified in the Kelly Green. And today was just truly special. Over 2,000 yards in that second half. Again, you knew that they were going to give him the ball, and he still was able to be successful. The jump cut is a thing of beauty. It's like watching a James Harden step back three-pointer. It's just aesthetically pleasing in a way that nobody else can do, and it creates so many yards after first contact, after being stuffed at the line of the scrimmage. He is a special talent. It's special footwork, special strength, special athleticism. It has been a return on investment beyond our wildest dreams. And that is saying something, because as Penn State guys, as Pennsylvania people, our dreams were very, very high for Saquon Barkley. He has surpassed them. I don't know what they do next week. He's 100 yards away from the record. I don't know if they'll play him or not. There's really no reason or incentive aside from the record for him to play. So I don't know what happens. And if he doesn't play, I want one last time this regular season to say what an absolute home run it was to bring Saquon Barkley back home to Pennsylvania and to the Philadelphia Eagles. And hey, to the Giants, thank you as always. I can't believe you did it. And hey, congratulations on the win today, beating the Colts. That's big, right? Oh man, now you're the 5 pick instead of the 1. But hey, you have all that cap space. I won't forget the Giants fans who were in our comments telling us that, hey, we got to save money. Devin Singletary is 1/4 of the cost and about as much production as Saquon Barkley. Well, check in with me next week. I want to know when Devin Singletary is chasing Eric Dickerson's record for most rushing yards in a single season. Again, I cannot stress it enough. Super thankful, super grateful to watch Saquon Barkley every week. The extra level that he has brought to this offense, brought to this team, it is beyond the wildest expectations that I've ever had. It was the highest of expectations, and he still surpassed them. He's been great, and he could be the difference between us and a Super Bowl. So that was the one thing I want to touch. I cannot stress it enough. I know I've done this rant every single week of how grateful I am. One last time in 2024. Thank you to Saquon Barkley. And I'll leave it tonight because this is Birds vs. Boys, and we should touch on the Cowboys, and Kevin and I will do a show this week. But I just want to congratulate the Cowboys because, yes, it sucks to lose 41-7 to your division rival and your biggest rival in the division. It sucks to lose 41-7 when your biggest rival wins the division while beating you 41-7. It sucks to be eliminated from the playoffs. It sucks to have 2 backup quarterbacks carve your defense. It sucks to watch somebody like Saquon Barkley go off on you because you, quote unquote, didn't have the free agency money to spend in your salary cap on running backs and running back prospects like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. I know all of that sucks, but I do have one saving grace. And this means more than the Eagles winning their 11th NFC East championship in my lifetime. It matters more than the 14th playoff appearance the Eagles are about to make in my lifetime. It matters more than Saquon Barkley possibly setting the single season rushing record. What I mean when I say this is congratulations to the Dallas Cowboys. A Netflix documentary on the way. This is amazing, guys. Ratings galore. This will be huge. I can see this being the #1 most streamed show on Netflix. And yeah, it'd be great for the Eagles to win a Super Bowl. Again, it would be the 4th time them going to a Super Bowl in my lifetime. And yes, the Cowboys have never been once in my lifetime. But think about going into a streaming service and seeing your favorite team be the #1 most watched show in that streaming service. That'll be huge for Jerry Jones. Hopefully those guys with that money from the Netflix streaming service and from their documentary can use some of that money on a running back prospect like Saquon Barkley, like we did, or get a defensive end in there, or help on the offensive line, or a wide receiver across from CeeDee Lamb. But for now, this is big. Don't you worry that you lost 41-7 to your biggest rival. You have a Netflix documentary, and that's what everybody craves in 2025. All right, we'll be back this week. Thanks for everybody who tuned in. The Eagles are NFC East champions, 11th time in my lifetime. They did it in dominant fashion, 41-7 over the Cowboys. What a glorious day. Beautiful weather for football. Beautiful weather to win the division yet again. Beautiful weather for Saquon Barkley to go over 2,000 yards rushing. We'll be back this week previewing the final week of the regular season. Can't believe we are at this point, but we will talk to you guys soon.